We had talked about the attack on Sony. There's all kinds of different opinions of what that actually cost them, but one of the statistics I heard is that it was $15 million.
Internal notification, but it's typically when law enforcement comes knocking at your door. It's posted out on social media, it's tweeted, or you receive an email, as in the case of Sony's.
3/4 of the year almost, or I mean, a little bit less than that, but that's a huge amount of time.
Absolutely, it is. And when you have that large of a window of a breach, you then
place that we hear a lot of our trade magazines where they talk about, you know, that the real focus of security should be time to detect and then time to contain. Could you talk about that in a
This looks like someone is laying the trail for an attack. And when you have that type of staffing them for a little bit, but they're going to move on to something bigger and better. So the question then comes into play, how do we get them? We've tried to, the critical piece for me is finding that. And in the public sector and even the private sector, they're hard to come by. So them on staff that has that ability and partner with them, whether it be a managed service, another government entity, etc. But you need that type of skill set in order to detect and contain.
And the clearance as well, right?
Absolutely.
So clearance is pretty critical.
And you know, there's an investment in being able to have a security to be able to work in certain agencies. So
Absolutely. And